Greetings, everybody. My name is John Ruzek. I'm the Vice President of Engagement for the University of Minnesota Alumni Association. And I thank you all for joining us today for making the most of LinkedIn Q&A webinar. So I'm glad you're here to learn about LinkedIn. We're going to keep this pretty casual and informal, and you'll hear in a few minutes kind of some top tips that both myself and my co-presenter would like to share with you. But then we're going to leave plenty of time for Q&A as well. So definitely don't be shy when that comes up. First and foremost, thank you to our alumni members and donors of the University of Minnesota Alumni Association, who make a lot of our both in-person events and also virtual events possible. And we're really hoping to get back to in-person events down the road, but not until it's pretty safe to do so. So until that time, we're going to continue to do virtual programming like this, and your support definitely makes a difference. So if you'd like to learn more, you can go to umnalumni.org/membership or member and learn more. And thank you again to our alumni members and donors. We are on the Zoom platform, and if for any reason you want to listen via the phone, there's some details both listed here on this screen, but also in your original email confirmation to this webinar as far as some different audio options. And as I said before, we will be welcoming questions, and you can submit them using the Q&A button on your participant bar here in Zoom. So when that time comes up, feel free to type in some questions. So it is my pleasure to welcome today my good friend and colleague, Maggie Tomas, who's the director of the Graduate Business Career Center at the Carlson School of Management at the University of Minnesota. I had the chance to work with her over the years in my role at, in the Alumni Association and her role at the Carlson School, and she's a great career development thinker and also active on the social media space. So I thank her for her time today, and welcome, Maggie.
Thanks, John. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, as John mentioned, my role at the university is I manage the Graduate Business Career Center. So have a team of 13 that are committed to helping not only our graduate students, so our MBAs and specialty master's students, find jobs they love, but also we work with and serve alumni. So it's great to be here talking about LinkedIn. We leverage it all the time in our jobs. Half the team is student facing or alumni facing, so they work directly with helping you figure out what you want to do. And the other half is employer facing, so reaching out and understanding how to use LinkedIn as a job tool, a job search tool. So I'm happy to be here and share any tips I can and answer your questions. And I'm honored to be asked by John, who I consider the LinkedIn expert at the university. So you're in good hands.
It's just because I'm so old that I've been on it for so long. I've been on it 14 years, which made me kind of shudder. I was like, oh yeah, I guess it has existed. But that is kind of the thing, as we'll talk about today, both with LinkedIn, but just other social platforms, especially since the mid 2000s, so much has changed. But I think especially, as Maggie's going to talk about a little bit later, just kind of being consistent on, engaging on the platforms that you're comfortable in or that are beneficial to your professional journey. Taking that time, even if it's just short bits of time, will be helpful down the road. So without further ado, we'll just kind of jump in right to it. This is the first time I've done a poll using the Zoom platform. So we're going to see if this works. And if it fails, it's all my fault. So first, I'm going to launch. All right, so, okay, you can see it. So it's a two-parter. Both first, we wanted to get a sense of kind of what your familiarity is with LinkedIn, and then also what parts of the LinkedIn experience would you like to improve. And so we'll give it a few seconds here to allow people to a chance to give their feedback. And again, this is, I think whether you're a beginner or intermediate or, a pro, you know, there's lots of things that we can drill into today. So, all right, I'll give it a few more seconds here. All right, we got about 3/4 of the people submitting. All right, Maggie, are you able to see the, oh, I'm gonna share results. All right, okay, so, all right, so good. There's not too many pros, and so, and I'm always learning stuff too. So we definitely have a beginner and intermediate audience here today, but then also, as far as just what people are interested in, making those professional connections, and definitely LinkedIn is the social media platform of, in my opinion, of choice as far as kind of maintaining your professional brand, but then also making connections with others in your field. So this is really helpful just as far as kind of getting a pulse on what people are thinking of. So thank you for taking time to share that. So, all right, are we back at my screen or at the PowerPoint, Maggie?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I just don't want to assume that what I'm seeing is what they're seeing. So we're talking about different social media platforms. And, you know, what I'd often say is, you know, LinkedIn might be the, you know, the redheaded cousin of a lot of other social media platforms. Is it the most coolest social media platform? No. But what I would say is that LinkedIn is going to be something over the course of time, as far as keeping your professional presence, but also making connections with others. It will be very helpful down the road. It doesn't have, you know, Instagram filters or, you know, TikTok videos or things like that. However, there are a lot of different things that you can use, both multimedia wise within your profile, and then also just different ways, both post images and videos within your feed. So, you know, again, LinkedIn might not be the most hip platform, but in my opinion, it will be something that can be leveraged down the road. And I'm also painfully aware that I'm using a meme from a movie that came out 25 years ago, which informs kind of my popular culture pulse at the moment. But
I will additionally to that point, John, I would say that LinkedIn, it's probably going to be relevant for longer. It's less controversial. So why it might not have some of the hip features, it's less controversial. It's less polarizing. It really is attached to your career. And so updates and bragging about yourself is more acceptable on LinkedIn, particularly if you're constantly doing it in a network capacity where you're also commenting on others. So to me, it feels like the most stable platform to invest in as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And you know, and obviously in this era of the pandemic and work from home, so much is virtual. But even in the times where we could get out and get a handful of business cards, as far as you know, being at events, or you know, the paper resumes that would come in. To be honest, like these photos that I've used, like my business cards are sitting in my basement somewhere in a box because I really don't really look at them after I get them. You know, over the course of time, or actually the 14 years that I've been on LinkedIn, you know, I've really used those opportunities to, you know, let's say I met Maggie for the first time and, you know, had a good connection. Would follow that up with just doing a LinkedIn connection, just so then she gets in my network, I'm in her network, and can kind of keep tabs from there. And much like a paper resume would kind of get shredded probably in the course of very short time after somebody gets it. Keeping up that LinkedIn profile is a way to have a kind of a more robust resume or overview of your career, and Maggie will talk about that in a little bit. But again, it's just kind of a way to continue your brand and continue to be, you know, be able to be found by people if you'd like to for professional reasons. And so segues into kind of just some very broad touch points as far as why I should use LinkedIn. You know, personally, I've used it to stay in touch with my networks. That's both, you know, friends, family, professional connections. It's not so much like I'm sharing pictures of kids, but especially, you know, if you think about, you know, friends and family and things like that, as those people change their careers and move on and things like that, you're connected in with those things as well. And there's just so many times where, you know, somebody makes a career change, or you're able to congratulate somebody on an accomplishment, and it's because you're linked in with them. You're able to, you know, stay up to date as far as a lot of those professional contacts. You can definitely use it to expand your professional connections, whether you're following up on in-person events or just, you know, seeking out more informational interviews. I do believe it complements face-to-face interactions when we can get back together and do that, or do that in a socially distant, responsible way. You know, we can show examples later on about how you can contribute and comment on, you know, industry conversations that either happen in groups or pop up in the news feed, and really use it to help build your professional brand. And obviously we know a lot of recruiters are on these platforms and review accounts as well, and also sometimes search for candidates. And also, if you are a job seeker or looking to make a career change, it is a great way, another tool to search for jobs as well. Maggie, anything from this jump out to you, or other things that you add?
I mean, all of it really. LinkedIn allows you to network without physically being there or trying. So like I always say, it allows you to be networking while you're sleeping. If you are updating, keeping your LinkedIn profile up to date, and you are trying to stay active, you know, that you're coming through on people's feeds, even when you're not on LinkedIn anymore, right? Your brand is out there with you actually having to commit to 2 hours to any event. And in terms of what John touched on before with the business card, like the business card has almost become this tool that you take, and then you get back to your computer or to your phone or wherever, and you look it up and you add that person as your LinkedIn connection with a note, and then the business card could be thrown away. You know, it's just sort of that intermediary step before they become part of your LinkedIn network, which is really truly where all networking happens. And particularly right now, I mean, LinkedIn usage from my team and from the students and alumni we work with is it's so increased because you can't do the face-to-face things as much. And we are sitting in the computer all the time instead of in-person meetings. So you can be following up on LinkedIn really quickly. So devoting time now more than ever is really important.
Thank you for that. And so what we're going to do now is just jump into about 6 starter tips. And it's not meant to be, you know, all inclusive, but Maggie's going to touch on 3 things, and then I'm going to touch on 3 things, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to segue over to the live view of my LinkedIn profile page. Can you see that, Maggie?
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
So start us off. I know you've talked about kind of the about section. Yep. And I'll say right up front, my about section is not as robust as it can be. So I'm going to be taking notes while you talk about the importance of this section.
So yeah, absolutely. So the about section, and sometimes it's called a summary section when you're reading about LinkedIn, or if you see other LinkedIn speakers. And it really is incredibly important because this is your time to describe yourself in your own words. When you write a resume, there's a pretty strict formula that you have to talk about. You have to list your jobs in reverse chronological order, and you don't really get to use your own words and your own voice to describe why you love what you do. And that's what the about section can do. The first 2 lines I find the most important. It's you're grabbing the person's attention, the reader's attention, and you need to talk about what you do in your own words. So a really strong description of what that is in your own voice. Sometimes it's referred to as a tagline. An example, I was looking up some examples of great profiles. Here's a senior recruiter's first line of the about section. I find great people and help them find great careers. Like that is a quick very simple, but the recruiter's own words of describing what they do. So it's not as much resume speak or job description speak. Instead, it's showing you, it's showing your voice to the reader and how you describe what you do. And then you can go on to the next paragraph and talk about any key accomplishments you've had. So this is your time to highlight some of those biggest accomplishments. It's your time to maybe share if you have made career switches. You can talk about them in your own words. I've even seen people, talk about work outside of their work, what they do. So this is also your summary section, your about section could be a chance where maybe some of your mission-driven nonprofit, your own venture, your consulting work, anything you kind of do on the side can be talked about in the context of who you are too. There's a lot of freedom in that about section. Mm-hmm. And I've seen them, short, a paragraph like John's, all the way down to 5 paragraphs. As long as that language is catchy and it's true, it can be really powerful. Another thing that can be added to the about section that I've seen people do well is the last couple of lines, just listing some keywords, particularly if you are in job search mode. That's how recruiters find you. They find you by keywords, right? So they're going to be searching for people who have these words in their profile. And instead of trying to add them to every job description, like is recommended for a resume, you can just add a couple sentences in your about section with the keywords so the recruiter can find you. But you always want that to be at the bottom of that about section, not the top. The top is that tagline that like you're getting them with what you do and your description of what you do. And if you don't love what you do, right? Like maybe you're on LinkedIn right now because you're trying to find something different. Then what is it you're passionate about? Like, what is it you love about work? What is it you love about, what skill do you bring to the table? That could be your tagline too. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of some of my quick tips for the about section. One other one that I read that was great. This is by a product manager. Love to dig, this is the first line again of the about section. Love to dig into customer problems and solve them with technology. So that's his description, right, of using technology to solve customer needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've also heard some social folks talk about this is the title field, kind of like in your profile section, and again, mine is very pedestrian, but I've also, going back to Maggie's point about keywords and things like that, I've also heard people talk about, that's also an area to be purposeful about potential keyword searches and things like that. Yeah. Absolutely. And now, we're just looking at my profile page, not because it's the example or, a great example. It's not to pick on anybody, but as you've talked about being authentic as far as, how you represent yourself online and especially with LinkedIn. So talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think the LinkedIn profiles that stand out the most are when you read them and you get a sense of who the person is. So again, it's beyond the resume. So you're using your real language. You're talking about your passions. You're talking about your past. I've seen great profiles talk about how when they were a kid, they loved solving problems and now they do that as a consultant or whatever. You're really linking your whole self and you're using real language in the way you would normally speak. Some people use the first person, some people use the third person. I used to say, like 5 years ago, if you asked me, I'd say, oh, you should always use third person, like more like a resume. And now you're seeing that a lot of people use first person. And I think that is a bit more powerful because you're allowed, it's like you're talking, right? There's more authenticity that comes from that. This is a time that you can talk about maybe why you're passionate about something. I was reading a woman's LinkedIn profile who works in the healthcare and pharmaceutical industry as a marketer. And she, in her profile, after she did like a nice, summary about why she's passionate about marketing and maybe some of her biggest clients or achievements, she then said, transitioned into healthcare and I'm passionate about healthcare after my husband's cancer diagnosis. Like, again, incredibly authentic, but now you trust this person. Now you understand her change, right? And you understand why she would be driven to go from maybe, CPG marketing into pharmaceutical marketing. I mean, it's a very business example, but I think you can be very real in LinkedIn. And I think that's becoming more and more common. You'll see on on feeds when people are commenting or sharing stories or writing blog posts, there's almost this like convergence of like Facebook and LinkedIn in that you're able to be a little bit more real. So people are hiring the real you. And I think that's a way to get you noticed too. And even if you feel a little scared to be that authentic, you want people to hire the real you, right? Like you want people to reach out to you and then you not have to be phony or put on a false pretense in the interview or at the job. So I think, you know, if there's an area or something you want to share that you're passionate about, now is the time. So being authentic on LinkedIn, I feel is incredibly important. People are drawn to it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And yeah, and these are areas we could explore later on, but kind of in the featured media section, like, you know, if you're featured on other websites or have photos from events or other things, you can kind of use that to, you know, bring to life some of the things that would maybe just be like a bullet point in a resume or things like that. And then also just kind of in the broader profile, there's so many things, both from, you know, your work experience to, you know, if licenses and certifications are important to your industry, putting it there. You know, maybe you don't have tons of career experience at this point, but you can flesh it out with some more applicable volunteer experience. Those are all things to do. And we can also drill down into, you know, kind of how LinkedIn talks about skills a little later. Maggie, kind of your last point, just as far as kind of committing to engaging in the platform, what's your advice in that area?
I think, I mean, if you can make a commitment to 10 to 15 minutes a day, it's not a ton. I try to have it be one of the first things I do, you know, when I'm logging into the computer, I'm opening all my different programs in the morning and I open LinkedIn and then engage in some way. So whether it's, you know, LinkedIn's gotten really good at happy birthdays, whether it's saying happy birthday to whoever is in your connection whose birthday is, noticing people's job movements and congratulating on them. If there's an article you read, posting it. New content is really valuable in helping you pop up to the top of people's feeds. And why it would be important to pop up at the top of people's feeds is because then you're more likely to be thought of, right? You're networking. You're going to be more likely to be thought of for potential job opportunities. Commenting on people's posts. Anything you can do to engage for 10 to 15 minutes a day is going to keep you active on LinkedIn, and you will see that your number of views. So you can see in your profile. So you can see right now, John says, you know, how many people viewed his profile. If you can commit to 10 to 15 minutes active on LinkedIn a day, that's not a ton, you will see those number of views increase. I can totally see a difference of when I'm being diligent about my LinkedIn work and when I'm not, and the amount of employers that reach out to me to hire our students. It absolutely increases when I am more active on LinkedIn because I'm engaging. People are thinking, oh yeah, the Career Center. Oh gosh, yeah, let me see if Carlson can help me with an internship. Because I'm active on it. And when I don't, my views are less and I'm not getting those opportunities for students that come my way. So if you can just make that commitment, you'll see that LinkedIn will actually do the work for you that we're talking about. But if you just create your profile and then don't engage, LinkedIn's not going to really be working on your behalf.
Absolutely. And I'll put in a plug. If there's any recruiters or employers who are looking for master's level business students, connect with Maggie and the Graduate Business Career Center at the U. And then if it's kind of more undergraduate facing jobs, check out the Gold Pass system at the U, goldpass.umn.edu. So trying to remember all these URLs. And you know what I'd also say, like, just as far as there's some, you know, shortcuts that you can do as far as, you know, let's say you want to get better about posting content on LinkedIn or sharing articles. You can use kind of like social media schedulers like Hootsuite to just simply, you know, schedule out some future posts, and then, you know, you don't have to remember to do it on a daily basis. But when you have like a spare 30 minutes of time, if there's certain things, like for myself, it's like, you know, as I come across interesting U of M news or alumni shout outs or, you know, social media tips or just things that interest me from a professional standpoint, generally just kind of keep a draft of some of those links. And then, you know, when I have a spare 30 minutes, you know, maybe once a week or every 2 weeks, just schedule some future posts, and then it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, but it keeps the rhythm going. And you don't have to post daily, but I think it's going back to Maggie's point, just settling into a routine that makes sense to you and that you're comfortable with, but that you're actually, engaging on the platform, because, even just simply liking something can help kind of, elevate, how people see or find you on the platform. So
absolutely.
Thank you for those tips. And kind of the three things that I'm going to talk about right now is the, obviously, like, and people are very familiar with this, I'll just use 3M as an example. So many employers, both from corporate to nonprofit to, whatever. I mean, generally most larger, employers have a LinkedIn company page right now. And so this is a great way, whether you're applying for a job or just starting to prepare for that interview, starting to think about, what's important to that company? What is the things that are happening in that industry or sector? You can find other people in your network who work there, or kind of do some future searches on that. You can start to follow the news releases that they put out as well. So there's lots of different ways, and also jobs, obviously. And so those are really great things to do for companies that are of interest to you. And then also what I will recommend is, so if you start typing University of Minnesota, there's kind of distinctions as far as, a company page for the University of Minnesota likely is more, job facing for the Twin Cities campus or system campuses. And if that's like, as far as working at the University of Minnesota is of interest, definitely follow that. But I'm going to show the school page here for a sec. And so just always like look at, the designator school, and I'm gonna view it as a member because I have some very light admin rights for that. So this is how generally most people would view the University of Minnesota school page. And I really hope down the road LinkedIn doesn't get rid of this piece, but under this is the alumni tab, and it's basically an alumni finder. So like, for example, there's over 350,000 what they refer to as alums on LinkedIn. These are definitely people who hold degrees, but it also could be some current students. It could be some people who did some coursework. So just know that, but this numbers really has been going up over the years. And so it just shows more and more people are at least having some type of presence on LinkedIn. So the reason I show this is just like saying, okay, let's say you're wanting to, maybe do some more networking with people in the greater Twin Cities area, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And then you see the two columns here. You can start searching then by what they do or what they studied, what they're skilled at. So I'm just going to do what they do. I'm going to select information technology, and then I'm going to say United Health Group, just, because you could slice and dice these filters however you want. And then it starts narrowing down to 303 alumni. And then you can start working backwards on that as far as, from a networking standpoint or potentially people that you'd like to connect with, just starting to do some initial research on that, or seeing maybe the common groups that those participants are in. It's just a really easy way to slice and dice as far as finding alumni on the platform. And I know like the Carlson School has a school page as well, and some of the other kind of professional schools. Is this a tool that you sometimes refer to folks, Maggie?
100%. It's one of the first things that we have when students come in for orientation. After we help them with their profile, we dig into this and teach them how to use it, because you know, when you're an alumni or when you're a current student, like one of the things that you get that we say you're paying for is the alumni network, right? And so when you're in a job search, it's so important to understand how to use this tool to identify alumni who are in the fields, the functions, the companies that you want. And you also, I don't think people who haven't tried it realize the power that comes from when you reach out to someone. I'm a current student, or I'm a fellow alumni. Any type of connection you can have, people are very driven to say yes to any networking request or any connection.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I'm going to answer this question that came in right, but I'm just going to pick Will's category here, because somebody asked a question of like, how do I don't know if it's about like if somebody sends you a connection request, if you're trying to figure out who the second or third level, you know, connection, you know, made that connection. I don't know if I'm reading the question correctly, but you can obviously see here, like if, let's say if Will and I were connected, it would say first because, you know, we're connected one-on-one. From a second level connection, it basically just then, you know, shows that you have 6 mutual connections. So I could click on that and it will show me these are the 6 people that we have in common. And sometimes, you know, I will reach out to people, like if I'm maybe wanting more of a warm introduction, just to be like, hey, do you know Will very well? Would you be willing to make an intro? And, you know, I think sometimes people like, you know, will have a deeper professional relationship. Sometimes it's like, hey, I met this person at a conference 15 years ago. You know, I'm maybe not the strongest connection, but that's one way you can kind of suss out as far as kind of those, you know, what second and the third level connection is that you have no connections at all in common. I don't know if I answered that question, but if not, just type it in back in the Q&A stream. What I want to do, like just as far as, and I always pick on Don Shelby's LinkedIn profile, just more to be safe, since he's a former TV news anchor, and actually, I actually really respect his work quite a bit. But I always use this as the example as far as possibly making a connection request. Whether through the desktop version or mobile, always, if you can customize your invites, it just, much like if you're sending somebody an email, just putting in a few words about why you're interested in connecting, that really does help, especially if the person on the other end doesn't know you that well. It will help in the long run, as far as I think, you know, maybe the person accepting it. I've tested this a few times last night because it's a new wrinkle with LinkedIn, because you hit connect and then it used to say, would you like to add a message? And it still does, but I'll show you this just because it's kind of off-putting at first. So it says, so now it says, you know, you can customize this invite, and it says your invitation to the person is on the way. However, if you click out of this, you are not sending the person an invite. I've gone back and checked my sent invites, and as long as I don't select done, it will not send it to Don Shelby. But from here, you can add that customized note, you know, greetings, Don, you know, my name is John, et cetera, you know, and then kind of the reason about why you're wanting to connect. So I always encourage people to customize when they can. The other feature from profiles that you can do, and it's almost like following somebody on Facebook or Twitter, but if you go over to the more section, there is a follow button. So let's say Don Shelby's he's not a good example because he doesn't have some recent posts, but let's say it's somebody who's, you know, posting a lot on LinkedIn. You can follow the person much like you'd follow someone on Twitter, things like that. Just so their content would theoretically show up in your timeline a little bit more. You're not necessarily connected to them from a one-to-one standpoint, but it is a kind of a passive way to still follow their content or perhaps get on their radar. So I just mentioned that just because I think that's often a feature of LinkedIn that's maybe not utilized as much. And then just last but not least, and I won't go into like all the details, but you know, as you work with your LinkedIn profile, go back in and visit those account settings and privacy settings and set it to what is of interest to you and how you want to be found. Generally, you know, I'm an advocate of making your profile very public as far as, you know, like if you're wanting others in your industry to, you know, find you, or recruiters to find you. It's like, you know, there's sometimes I've come across people who have like, they've selected to not make their LinkedIn profile public. And so they're not going to be showing up in recruiter searches or things like that. And if that's truly your intention, that's fine. But there's lots of different kind of widgets you can turn on and off as far as like, you know, let's say I'm going to go back to my profile. Like you can, you know, set some more things as far as letting recruiters know that you're open to work in other settings like that. And I encourage this on any social platform you're on, always, like, you know, maybe yearly or twice a year, revisit those privacy settings, because things change over time. And, you know, and maybe, you know, there's some times where you're really in the job search mode or just in the more public facing mode. Have all those options open to, you know, help you in that search, you know. And then there might be times where, you know, let's say you're just wanting to do a complete overhaul on your LinkedIn profile. So you might turn off the notifications on updates on your profile just because you're, you know, doing major work on your platform and, you know, don't want to be sending out, you know, notifications about it. It's all it's customizable. So anything else you'd have on that, Maggie?
Yeah, well, one of the questions, I mean, it's sort of like related, one of the questions about etiquette of LinkedIn, is a good practice to be viewing profiles of persons you randomly come across without some sort of message or introduction as to why you're viewing their profile. And then it says there seems to be little privacy settings on LinkedIn. So yes, LinkedIn has a feature, unless you have premium, you can, if you have premium, you can view people's profiles without them seeing that you viewed them. If you don't have premium, unlike Facebook, you can't stalk people without them not knowing, right? So if you're viewing people's profiles, they can see that on LinkedIn. I do not think it's required that every time you're looking someone up, you have to write a message, hi, I was looking at you because, unless you really want to truly make a connection with them, then make that connection. And as John said, always include a note. People that are active on LinkedIn are very accustomed to people looking at their profile because they're active on LinkedIn. So if you're joining conversations, of course, people are going to be looking at, oh, who is this person? And so it's not rude to be looking at them without a note. If they're not that active on LinkedIn and you looked at them, they're probably not going to notice anyway. You know what I mean? Unless you actually send a message and it pings them. So that's my answer to that. I don't think that it's needed unless you think that the person you just viewed should be in your network. Then go ahead and make that connection.
Yeah, because especially like, you know, like especially with like LinkedIn etiquette, to be honest, like the biggest pet peeve of mine is like, you know, maybe like a financial advisor type sending me a LinkedIn invite and I decide to accept it, and then in a day or two I can set my watch to being solicited for financial services. That gets annoying. You know, so, you know, I think, and obviously there's a business to business component on lots of things, but you know, I guess I would just continue to encourage people's overall judgment as far as you know, how you go about soliciting those such business, or just working to and I think anything, whether it's business or the job searches, making those kind of sincere, authentic, professional connections first, and then, you know, down the road, you know, maybe picking people's brains on, you know, XYZ, but kind of when like the, you know, the first salvo is, you know, solicitation, you know, I think that's what sometimes turns me off. And I know like sometimes recruiters can be that way with candidates and vice versa, you know, candidates to recruiters. But just like any platform or over email, it's just, you know, encourage people to keep it professional. But I agree with Maggie. If LinkedIn, if you don't want people to see that you've, you know, looked at their profile, you can go into, you know, you can set that privacy setting. You know, the only thing in return is you won't be able to see who looked at your profile, and that's fine, you know, but that's a choice. And, but I think, you know, if you do have it on, like viewing someone's LinkedIn profile, at least to me, isn't like, isn't anything bad in my opinion. So,
same.
So yeah, we're gonna jump into just some of the questions. Someone had just a question about some of the aspects of the profile page. We've talked about the about section, kind of the featured media section. This is like, you know, like when I was looking at Don Shelby's page and like there wasn't really any activity, like if you visited my page, like, you know, I think you'd be able to see like some of the activity and posts that I've engaged with. And so that's just kind of another way to learn about, you know, what people in your network are interested in or sharing with. You can absolutely list, much like a resume, kind of the experience aspect. I lean a little bit more towards less is more, or just being short with descriptions, but you can also, again, add some of that multimedia content to punch up your past experience. Maggie, how do you coach students just kind of in this section?
Yeah, we tell them it's not supposed to be your resume. So it's not supposed to have every bullet of everything that you did. And there's two schools of that. I tend to think, particularly for students that are emerging in their fields, a little short description similar to what you have, like a couple of sentences, you know, a sentence that describes what you do and then maybe a big achievement is great to put in there. You want to be thinking about what you fill in that experience section. Be mindful of what you want to go towards, because that's how you want to be filling that in. And I love, you know, when there is a chance to put in any type of media presentations, you know, digital hands, any digital features that you can connect to that, it's important, but it shouldn't be as robust as your resume, because nobody's going to read all that.
Right, right. And also the other, I mentioned earlier, kind of the aspect with, there's a skills area and on LinkedIn. You know, especially if you're kind of new to LinkedIn and or maybe haven't utilized this field, you know, select the skills that are authentic to you and, you know, appropriate for your respective industry, and you know, mark those on, not so much to brag, but just like, as you're seeing in the Alumni Finder, that skill area is one way that people can search, and also recruiters can search. People can also endorse you for those skills. Many years ago, LinkedIn was like really trying to, because I think they were trying to get the numbers up on the skill area. So they kept trying to get people to endorse people for different skills and things like that. You can still do that. And so that's kind of a nice way to, you know, give a pat on the back to somebody who you know, do think, you know, does well in a certain area. There's also a recommendations field. You know, kind of over time, you know, you can both collect and receive a lot of different recommendations. And especially, you know, kind of from a resume standpoint, that's also a way that, you know, if a potential employer is looking at you, you know, there's, you know, 40 testimonials there that somebody could look at. You know, you could list accomplishments, you can, you know, see different interests, things like that. You know, somebody just popped a question in the chat stream about how close somebody should be as far as a LinkedIn connection. I invite Maggie's comments on this too. You know, I would say that there's no right or wrong answer. I've probably, in my role in alumni relations, I've been a little bit more expansive as far as, like, you know, if it's a U of M alum, I will connect with that person. If it's somebody in an industry area that I'm really interested in, I'll connect with that person. If it tends to be maybe someone with no mutual connections, or you know, LinkedIn doesn't really have as many spam accounts now, but there, you know, used to be times where it'd be some weird account from the middle of India with like 2 connections. Generally, I'd stay away from that, just because, you know, it didn't really seem like there was a person behind those accounts. You know, if it's something where you just want to keep your LinkedIn network as far as truly those people that you know intimately, you can absolutely decide to do that. I've kind of taken the approach to be a little bit more expansive, just because sometimes some of the social media connections I've made first has allowed for really great in-person connections or other future collaborations down the road. So I guess that's why I kind of leave the door open. Maggie, what's been your thought in that area?
So I'm similar to you in that I let it be fairly wide just because of my role at the university, and you know, it's a tool for my job. But if someone reaches out to me, and I always tell the students and alumni I work with, think of it, if someone's going to reach out to you and you don't know who they are and there's no note, I don't say yes, because I need them to like explain the context. So I would give yourself that as you're reaching out to people, like if it's a very obvious connection, of course, like anyone who you work with or you have worked with, you know, you connect with in the community or any nonprofit work, absolutely they should be your connections. And then other people who you want to expand onto that, let them know why you should connect or who you are, and then grow it that way. I don't think, you know, I have a colleague who suggests to people he works with that every couple of years sort of do a LinkedIn scrub. Who do you not know? Who did you say, you know, and kind of like remove those so you can be more helpful with LinkedIn, right? So like John said, if someone's asking you for an introduction and it's someone you met at a conference 15 years ago, you can't really help. That secondary connection for you is not going to be that helpful to that person. So there's some school of thought in the scrubbing. I don't do that. Instead, just going forward, I'm trying to be really mindful of who I accept. If I automatically know them because they're an alum or I've worked with them, it's just really clear, yes. And if not, I need that person to sort of let me know why we should connect. And it's usually a yes.
Yeah. And be honest, like over the course of the 14 years that I've been on LinkedIn, yeah, I mean, not everyone's like kind of a daily user like Maggie or myself. However, like, you know, whether it's somebody who suddenly is going to, you know, start hiring for positions or kind of gets back into the professional game and is starting to leverage their LinkedIn more. I mean, I would call like, I'd say there's tons of examples where I've had like what I would view as like dormant connections that I haven't necessarily heard from in a while, who suddenly pop back up on the radar. And, you know, again, that's kind of playing the long game with your LinkedIn network. Someone asked the question again, as far as kind of like seeing like, you know, going back to the Don Shelby example, seeing where you could find who your second degree connections are. And it's just a little, well, actually here under, I guess we share 200 people. All right. But like you can click on the mutual connections part and see that. Also from the My Network tab up here, I'll scroll down a little bit. It's going to load. So sometimes like LinkedIn will serve up the people you may know. So it will kind of list the number of connections. You can click on that. From this field, I'm fairly certain, at least the last time I tried it, if you click connect, it's going to send an instantaneous connect thing. That's why I always send or initiate an invite right through the profile page, just because it allows that opportunity to customize. All right, let's go back to questions here.
This last one is if LinkedIn profile should differ from the resume in a way. I think we touched a little bit on that in terms, so your job title, the title that you use, if you're really happy in your career and you just want more job titles like that, then write your current title. If you're seeking something else, then I would do a nice description of kind of like, you know, people leader, you know, or if you're an HR leader, but you're not necessarily right that you're the director of HR for Honeywell, right? Like maybe you're people leader instead, or human resources leader, something a little bit more generic. And then in that about section is where it's really different because you get to be really personal. It can be, you want a tagline, you want to show why you transitioned, you want to be authentic. And then in the experience section, I like a little bit of a description, but I don't want, you know, 5 to 7 bullets like you have in a resume, simply because that's just too much words. Like a lot of LinkedIn experts will show you that really the top part of the page is where they look the most. So they're not even going to be reading in all that description. Instead, they're just going to really be looking at like, what was your history? What led to what thing? What were some of the companies that you worked for? So I don't think that it's as whereas in a resume, the bullets and the description is the most important part, I don't think that about LinkedIn. I think the most important part is that about section and some of the multimedia things that you can bring in. So that's how I really see them different.
Thank you. All right, I just turned off the screen share just because one of the questions was about somebody asked, like, especially if they're going in and doing updates on their LinkedIn, how to, you know, let's say, stop, like if you're tweaking, like I've seen this, like sometimes a person tweaks a job title and it says, Maggie is now the, you know, instead of director, she's the senior director, and it looks like a completely new job. You can under, it's under your settings and privacy, but under the privacy tab, it's kind of under the profile. I believe it's under the profile viewing options, and or there's also an option as far as shared job changes, education changes, and work anniversaries from profile. And you can modify that as far as how you want to be seen. So at least the last time that I did that, I'm fairly confident that you can do those updates and do them privately. All right, and again, keep these are great questions coming in, so feel free to keep sending them in. Another question: I wonder if I should only post about things related to my specialty area, and if I'm watering down my professional identity if I share unrelated or other things that are just of interest to me. What do you recommend? Maggie, why don't you take that one first?
I don't think you only have to share things of your specialty area at all. I mean, they're hiring a whole person, right? And so you want them to know the whole you. And honestly, a lot of times, aside from a recruiter searching for just someone who has these keywords, right, which they're going to do without you popping up your profile. They're going to, I mean, without you popping up their feed, they're going to be doing that just from looking at your profile. Aside from that, a lot of times jobs are had because you share some sort of connection that might even be outside of that specialty area. You might be passionate about the same nonprofit. You might have played the same sport in undergrad. You might have the same hobby and hike the same mountain, or, you know, you might be passionate about this cause. A lot of times that's how really interesting connections are made. And then you realize, oh, you want to support this person in their job search too. So I say if there are other areas that are of interest to you that are outside of politics and religion, typically, it's safe for LinkedIn, and I think it makes you a whole person. Mm-hmm. That's my humble opinion. John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the more you can just show your full self in all the different interests, it's helpful, just because I think it just shows the, you know, the 360 view of you, and kind of all the things you could bring to the table as far as, you know, to a potential employer. I apologize, somebody in the chat field said that I'm saying you know too much, and I realize that, so I apologize for that. Working on it. But I would say the more you can show all the different aspects you bring to a role, that is helpful, and just really shows the personality. Because for me, I don't manage tons of social media accounts, but a lot of social media topics are of interest to me, and so that's kind of one area that I try to show as well. So let's see if there's other questions. Yeah, and again, if there's other questions, I'm gonna go back to showing the screen very quickly. All right. The other things, so we've talked about the follow option. Up in search, there's a variety of ways that you can do some more deeper searches as far as people or jobs, content. LinkedIn's also been trying to get more into the hashtag realm, as far as sometimes you see a certain article is trending because of a hashtag. Especially if it's something as you're sharing content, kind of towards the end of the post, you could put in one or two specific hashtags, and I think over time that could help elevate it or just expose it to a different audience as well. But especially under like the people search, you can search against your first and second connections, locations, current companies. There's a lot of the different filters. There's some things as far as that are only unlocked with like LinkedIn Premium. I'm personally not a big advocate of LinkedIn Premium just because I think there's a lot of things you can do with the free tool as is. But there might be certain areas that people are wanting to unlock. Maggie, from the students and alumni you work with, do they often look at premium or just other features?
So we typically advise them to start with free. And then if they're getting into an aggressive job search, if it's a student and they're maybe not finding as many tractions just from Carlson or you have Alumni and they want to like build it out bigger, we do suggest, okay, try premium for a month. It's usually free for a month anyway, or some nominal fee. Because the one feature that we like from premium is it allows you to connect, to write messages to anyone to see if that they will connect, right? Like it expands that a bit more. And I think that's helpful if you're doing a job search where you think you need something wider than your school network or your company network, whatever that is, where you would have that immediate connection. So in rare cases, we'll suggest it for those reasons. But typically, I agree with you that there's a lot you can do with free. Another thing that you made me think of when you were talking about hashtags and things like that is when you're writing original content, maybe you're at an event, whenever we go back to events, or you attended a great webinar or an article that you think might appeal to people, tagging other people in your network that either were at the event, that hosted the event, or that would be interested in the article, tagging them in your little description now lets their network see it too. So that's just another way to be even more visible and kind of expand your circle. And then you're also tagging someone else and it's helping them be active on LinkedIn too, which is kind of a helpful, generous way to use the platform.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I should have.
You're good at that.
Earlier. That's often a very underutilized aspect, and especially when you're giving a shout out or kudos to somebody.
Yes.
I would highly recommend that. Two things just really quickly, like on the right hand side, LinkedIn's gotten more into the kind of the news feed area, and I think over time you can follow like trends and things like that, and so it will serve up more of the things you're interested in. But from here you can see some of the things where it's articles you can either jump in on and comment or share, things like that. So that's just another way both to increase your professional knowledge as well, or possibly connect with other thought leaders. The other thing I will also say with groups, and groups with LinkedIn have kind of ebbed and flowed over time. They used to be a really crucial part. But going back a few years, I feel LinkedIn really gutted a lot of the functionality of groups, but there's still ways where alumni can, or alumni and friends or whoever, whatever part of a group you're in, you can still post content, join, other professional association groups that have content that you'd like to read or contribute to. But one shortcut I was revisiting last night is that if, let's say I'm not a connection with Walter Bond and I wouldn't be able to send a message since I'm not connected, sometimes people can set their preferences. If we're part of the same group, I can do the message, the person through the group. So sometimes that's a way to, let's say if you want to join a mutual group first before, reaching out to someone, that's kind of a shortcut that you can do. So that's just kind of one of the other tips that I would have. Maggie, any final words or thoughts from you? I think we've covered the questions that people put in the chat stream, and thank you everyone for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think people had great questions, so thank you for reminding us of great things. I think that the final thing, and I touched on this in the last one, is any ways you can think about how to be generous on LinkedIn too. Like John was mentioning, kudos and calling out, recognizing people for things. I think one, it's a great way to build your brand, and it also helps people want to help you too, right? And it'll come back to you. So John's really good at that, and I think that that's a really good tip that we both forgot to mention.
Oh. Yeah. Well, thank you, Maggie, for your time today. I know you're extremely busy, and I appreciate you sharing your expertise, and it's always fun to collaborate with you. So, thank you.
Same. Thank you. Thanks for having me, John, and thanks everyone for attending.
Yeah, and thank you to our alumni, students, and friends who've joined in today, and thank you to our alumni members and donors who have helped support initiatives like this. I hope you all have a good day. Good luck on wherever you are in this your professional journey, whether you're good and just want to keep up your personal brand, whether you're in the job search, maybe you're in a career transition. There's a lot of also career resources on the UMN alumni.org website as well. So definitely check those out, and we'll have more webinars coming up here in the coming year. But thank you again for sharing your noon hour with us, and be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.